Good afternoon and welcome to today's webinar on the Enterprise Performance Reporting System. Thank you for taking the time to join us today. I'm going to go over a few logistical matters with us before we get started. We have scheduled this webinar for 1 hour. If we have a lot of questions, we may go past that hour, but we will definitely cover the content in the 1 hour allotted for today's webinar. We have muted all participants, so please type in any questions you have throughout the webinar. We would like to address them as they come up if they pertain to that particular topic. If not, we will definitely get them addressed at the end. So again, please type in your questions through the GoToWebinar system. We are also recording today's webinar, and we'll send you a link to that recording within the next 24 to 48 hours. So please be on the lookout for that and know that if you missed anything or wanted to share this, we will be sending that to you via email. Also, we'd like to follow up with all of our participants. So someone with Smarter Solutions will follow up with you after today's event. If you do not wish to be contacted, please let us know in the exit survey at the end of the webinar. I will now turn it over to Rick Haynes, who is our lead master black belt and statistician here at Smarter Solutions and has also been one of the primary developers in this EPRS system that we're discussing today.
Hello everybody, this is Rick. Today's talk is going to be a bit of a marketing presentation, but because we're Smarter Solutions, there'll be some learning involved in it towards the end too. We're really primarily here to talk about our performance reporting system, and you'll see the benefits of it, and we hope you enjoy it. First off, though, I'm going to have the CEO of the company, Forrest Breifogel, speak a bit about the history that brought us this software, because it really somewhat patterns his development of the IEE system that we're going to be talking about. Forrest?
Okay, thank you, Rick. I've been working in process improvement area for many, many years. I guess it really started when I was taking a design of experiment course at IBM in 1975 when I was working in development. After that, I started working with a lot of different organizations within IBM, helping them basically improving how they were doing business. That overall thought process migrated to other companies when I founded Smarter Solutions in '92. But all during this time, it seemed to me that a lot of times we create these process improvement programs, but they just don't stick around for a long time. They basically die on the vine. My question, why does that occur? Well, there could be a lot of reasons to it, but two reasons that I think are really important are, one is dealing with measurements. Often when we look at measurements, they become table of numbers, stack bar charts, pie charts, but then predictive, and they're also not tied to the overall business system a lot of times. So because of this, I created the 30,000-foot level metrics, which has a predictive component to it. So to me, I think that's one aspect that businesses often really need. Now the second thing is that I think that process improvement and also the systems that are associated with that are often not linked to an organization's scorecards. So we might have people in the North Wing working on scorecards, and the people working on process improvement is in the South Wing, and they don't even talk to each other. So to me, that's a problem. So I think that there ought to be a natural linkage between scorecards and how the business actually runs. And so the way we do that is through what we call the value chain. So process improvement efforts tie into scorecards, and the value chain is pretty much linked together through what we put together called the Integrated Enterprise Excellence System, or IEE. Now, when you start looking at how you're going to implement IEE in the organization, you can have several different challenges, and those are shown on this slide here. So first, there's really no existing software that provides these 30,000-foot level predictive scorecards in a manner that we'd like to see. So that's one thing that's not out there. The second thing that's not out there is that there is software that creates these 30,000-foot level metrics. However, they don't create it and present it in a form that's conducive to scorecards. Now the third thing, the final thing that's listed there, is that we don't really have a way of linking the scorecards with what we actually do. And the software that provides the methodology for doing a good job relative to flow charting and how we describe what we do really does not have a means of tying and linking that to graphics, in our case, particular scorecards. So because of the shortcomings of the things that are out there right now relative to these points, we created the IEEE EPRS system so that it addresses these, and also we believe that it really helps link process improvement efforts to the overall business system. So at this point in time, I'd like to turn it over to Rick so that he can describe this EPRS system to you.
Well, thank you, Forrest. And if Forrest's passion didn't come through, it's just because you're hearing him on a telephone. Because this has been a big deal for a while. And I know we're going to be talking about software, but I need to tell you that this is not Rev 1 we're talking about. We started having a working model of this over a year ago. And so what you're going to be presented here is really the second edition or second revision. So you're not going to be trying out a lot of bugs if you get involved in this. So people have been liking it the way it is. But we're really talking about making scorecards. I'm going to show you a demonstration of it after I finish this slide. But I want to talk about how do people use scorecards. I think that also drives you into how you're going to choose to make a scorecard. Now, I've worked in a lot of different businesses before I got here working for Smarter Solutions, and I've consulted in a number of places. But these are the things I found where people use their performance metrics. They have routine meetings. Sometimes they print reports and route them around. Sometimes they got an electronic link to it, but it's static. Somebody has to copy and paste everything up there every day. And that is actually where Smarter Solutions was 6 years ago when I got here. People copied and pasted metrics to a web page. I'll tell you, it takes a lot of labor. There's also software-managed static scorecards, which you have a software interface that's real pretty. And the last one really is where the software manages a dynamic scorecard, and that's really what we're talking about today. We're going to call the EPRS. But honestly, all of these choices are better than not monitoring your performance. So let's get into the demonstration. This may drive some questions for you. I want you to feel comfortable with just typing them in, as Mallory said at the beginning. What we have here is basically the home page. I'm going to walk you through a very simple with an administrative overview of exactly how you create metrics and manage the system as a practitioner. All right, I'm going to start off with just our EPRS demo. I'm going to open this value chain. This would generally be, or I guess I should talk, we're using Forrest's Integrated Enterprise Excellence model that you start at a high level with the value chain, which is a graphic, this one's simplified, but it talks about functions of the business, and you start with the high-level metrics, or what he calls 30,000 foot, and then each of the functions drills down or opens up like you'd picture a flow chart into more detailed diagrams with metrics that now apply at lower levels in the organization. So this is a simple one. I'm just going to look at 3 different metrics here. First one's the profit. This is the format. What? Sorry, I'm not authorized to access. Well, that's what you get for preparation. Never had that happen. It will happen twice. Now I'm really amazed. How can I not be authorized? I guess I'll log out and log back in. Boy, you prepare for these things all the time. Try it again. Maybe I'm more authorized now. There we go. Apologize for that. It must have timed out my login. So this is a standard metric page. I can make it a little bit larger for you. Note that it just shows in a browser. I'm using Internet Explorer, but it works on all the major browsers, even my Mac at home. What you get is the diagram. Now, Forrest spoke to the 30,000 foot reporting method, and this is an example of it. Our charts are always a combination of a control chart that designates the period of time that you have been consistent or stable. Given that latest period of stability, it'll provide you a capability estimate. This one here, it always has a picture, and then at the bottom of the chart, it'll have a statement of capability. In this case, it says the predictable process, estimating that about, well, I guess that's 1% or 0.01% profit, which isn't very good, but it's consistent, so we have to really change the business. Now, note there's comments below. This one, you can put comments in every chart. There'll be links. I'll show you some of these in a minute. Let's go back, go through all of these. Hours per part. It's another format where you have subgroup data. But again, this one shows how you can stage. We had a process change. When they went to low staffing to high staffing, the hours per part came down. But again, looking over this period of time, we have a stable process that is about 9.3 hours per part, typically ranging from 5.7 to 12.8. So that would be our planning estimates for hours per part in this process. And it notes it's an acceptable process. We call it green. Going back to the last one I'm going to show you, which is defect rate, being an attribute. Now, some of this is updating slowly. I apologize. That's part of the go-to-meeting format. It's based on a lot of things. So please tell Mallory if I'm going a little bit too fast for your screen updates. Now, here again, this is our manufacturing loss. It says we're losing about 7%. You can see from the control chart it's stable. So figure this is 15, 16 weeks of data that we have not changed our process performance with respect to quality. Now I can look at my notes at the bottom. This says non-compliant raw materials release led to 100% scrap on a single job, which we removed it from the data. This gives you an honesty factor in your performance reporting because you can use all the functions we use in Minitab to build control charts and mark it up as such. Let's look at some of the other functions we have on our metric page. Well, first, you can go to a full image if you like a bigger picture. I know this is probably a little bigger than my interface page, but there's the whole chart. Go back to my, oop, went too far. There's a little X for it. I've got, you can see here's the title. You can tell the last time the chart was updated. But I can also use it to go to a different metric if I want to link metrics together. So if you have a drill down from one metric to another, it goes just to the yield loss chart by itself. I can also do a mail to, which is probably one of the favorite things we programmed into it, was if a viewer is viewing this chart and says, you know something, I think there's an issue. That might be a trend I see. There's a mail to link that automatically pops up and gives you the owner of the metric, and you can set it to also additional email addresses by default, such as a master black belt or maybe a manager. So you want to get it in, you can type your own notes in, send a note to the process owner without needing to call. It shows up in their general email basket. So it's a pretty neat function. Last one, these links, one of the things from Forrest, his guidance when we put this together is scorecards should not just be scorecards. They should be, let me set this different. If it is to be your window to monitor the performance of your company or your process, along with the display of the performance needs to be links to all the information that you might question or need with the process. So we have a long link list. As you see, there's a lot of space below it, but you can link to documents, sample instructions, explanations, project reports, websites, just about anything. So what we have here is the ability to link this document to anything you want that's associated with it, along with other metrics. So that's the view I'm going to make of just looking at the scorecard itself. What you've seen here is what a user would see using the software. Now I'm going to go back and we're going to go look at administration. Look at, this is what it takes to be a metric, or I guess to create a metric. I'm going to walk through one of them. We've got a number of them on our default site here. So this is what you go through to make a metric if you were an administrator. The power of what we're doing here is because we are using the power of Minitab to actually do all the calculations, estimations, chart generation. This EPRS software, what it does is it sends a macro command into Minitab that executes a macro that both acquires the original data from your data warehouse or shared drives on your network, imports the data automatically, executes the macro, builds the chart, and then it saves it in the EPRS system, which will then take that chart and post it on a web server for access by anyone in your organization. Now, what you see here is the standard setup. We have 3 primary macros that we have today. They do the 3 different types of data you might have: subgroup data, regular data, or attribute data. And if you've been through a Six Sigma class, you understand that attribute to continuous data, you treat it different. Attributes generally go from 0 to 1. Below this are the sections of the macro. These are command strings that change stuff. And you can mouse over them. I know it'll be small on your screen, but this is the type command. This is an attribute chart, and that's what type of data. And we have rates, we have percentages, and we have count data. So you tell the system what type of data it is, and it will adjust the chart to make it appropriate. You can do stages. You can just about anything that you can do in Minitab you're allowed to do with the macros here, even transformations, which if you've taken a Smarter Solutions Lean Six Sigma course, you understand what we're talking about. If you've been in other ones, you may not have found the power of doing that, but it's the transformation function that allows you to use these individual charts with so much power in monitoring your organization. All right, but if you heard me say, this is triggering the acquisition of data. One of our goals in this performance monitoring system was that it does not retain a copy of any of the company's performance data. I've been in that place in my last employer, and the minute you keep 2 copies of any set of data, one is guaranteed to be found wrong when you have an audit. So one of our goals in this is that this system will never carry an associated set of data that could be audited. What it does is it acquires the data from the system as it exists right when it makes the chart. So if you update your data set, at the next period for an update, it will collect that new data and build a new chart. But how does it do that? Well, we have here in the upper part where it says data source. For every source of data you're going to put a metric on, you define it into the system so that it knows where the data is. I'm going to open up the management screen for it. What you see here is just examples, but we can acquire basically any table of data that Minitab can use. It can be an ODBC database such as SAP, Oracle, or Access. It can take Excel files, text files, and a couple other database and spreadsheet formats. But the advantage of this is you don't have to have your organization do anything different with data collection. Now, you may want to format it a little bit differently so it looks like a table, but we don't have to keep 2 sets of data. I can't stress how important that is if you're getting a performance monitoring system. But we create one. Let's look at this one. Says CSV data. It's comma-separated variable. Now, how you identify the data source, there's a connection string and then an execution string that Minitab uses. Now, where do they come from? What's neat is if you use Minitab, and that's one thing this software requires, is some level of competency in Minitab. So you will use Minitab and go to File, Open Worksheet, open the data. Once it's open, in the history commands in Minitab, which I wasn't really planning on showing today, but it'll give you this same string. So you basically copy and paste it into here, and now you're set up. Go back to the data source, back to the metric list. I'm going to go call up my defect rate again. So this is where I left it. So I've talked about these commands, talked about how you get data. Well, here's a neat one. This is the chart that it shows, so you can see it here as it's being built. It is, even on my screen, hard to read. That's why we have a preview metric button that makes it full size for you to see what you're generating. But you can do a little bit of trial and error, or if you want to adjust the chart, you can do it right here. But right above where you see the hand, you'll see what this is here is the link to the metric. So if you ever want to show this metric in another document, in a website, in a scorecard, you copy and paste that link into it as a hot link, and you have now access to that performance chart. Now we're talking value chains here, and this talk here is not really about the value chain format and its benefits. But this is all we do is we paste this link into that flow chart, and now whenever I click on it, the most up-to-date version of that chart exists. Now I show you a couple of things at the bottom. If you hit this View Exec button, it actually shows these are the command string that's sent to Minitab to build the chart. Now, another thing I'm not showing you today is the Minitab macros that make these charts. But you are provided them with the software if purchased. It's built into the server that runs in this, and we give the users also a copy that anybody in the organization can use to build them locally or in the system. And then the test button actually generates the chart. When you like it, you would unpublish the current one and republish to get a new chart up there. Look at the last little bit of functions that run along here. Metadata. Flexibility was a key to designing this. What we realize is that everybody who's got performance metrics doesn't want a list of all their metrics in one big sheet. Everybody wants to drill down or subset them in some way. So what we have here is basically a free-form method to create the sort functions that you're going to use either for special analysis or specific scorecards. Now, I built 4 into this one. One's the location if you have different sites where you have your business. One could be different levels of company, a corporate or a divisional metric. You can use drop-down menus to pick fixed sites, let's just which production line or which organization. And here's one that just enters a number. But the point is you can put any field that helps you define subsets of the metrics. User accessibility. Many metrics in a business are open to everyone to view. And in our belief is that the more you share your performance data, the better people will work to meet your goals. But there are metrics that you don't want everybody to see, say your financial metrics. You have an ability here to remove accessibility to some metrics, to specific login amounts. So if you only want the financials to a financial group, each financial person gets their own ID to use this, and they have to log into it to see those metrics. The general user, though, does not need any login. There's no licensing requirement for user either. There's just one license for your site to do everything. So users don't have a password unless they want to get to some of the restricted data. Go back to making this one available to everybody. Now, if you had to do this by hand, it's still a bad process. So another one of the goals of building a system was to have it automatically update. So what that you'll see it's somehow the logic of why that prior screen identified the data then built the chart. Because built into this is to use the server scheduler, and it will create a schedule to create the metric. Currently in the version I have, we have daily, weekly, and monthly updates. Now if you set this daily, you'd pick the time, and at that time every day, this system would initiate, send the commands to Minitab to build each chart, which Minitab would then go get the current set of data existing on your servers, import it, make the chart, save the chart to the scorecard, and shut itself down. So you'll set up all your metrics based on when the data is updated. We think most performance metrics are probably done weekly. But again, this is also not intended to be a process management tool for SPC. This is really intended to be a business performance management tool. If you want to understand more of the differences, it would be done at a different time or ask a question. But that's why we don't do hourly and by minutes. Next one's where you set up the links for every metric you create. And it's as easy as typing them in. We have 5 different styles. You can go directly to another metric in our system. You can go to a flowchart or a value chain that's in the system. You can get stuff off the local file server, like your Maybe it's a shared drive on your network or individual PCs on the network. You can pull stuff directly off the World Wide Web or the Internet. But there's also, the last one is you can store files within the EPRS that you can also link to, such as maybe the instructions, the definitions for red, yellow, and green. They may not be anywhere else in your system, so you can put them in the web server that this operates.
Rick, we have a question.
Oh, please do.
Just to be clear, do you already have to have Minitab installed before you can use Smarter Solutions EPRS software?
Yeah, part of the installation is a server license for Minitab. Again, software licensing is always critically worked it through on Minitab. The reason is this system works as a user to Minitab. So you do need a license for Minitab that's on the same server that the software is, because it interacts with it as a user. Every person in the company does not need Minitab, but you do need a server copy for this to operate. The nice thing about Minitab's licensing, if you have a server license for the software, any user in the company can also use it too. It's just a shared server license. So yes, you do need Minitab.
Thank you.
All right. Last one's comments. This is probably the last requirement for us put on us when we designed this software, is you want to keep a running journal of everything that's gone on with that metric. And this one's got 3. You see when I created it, we updated something, and there's the note I read earlier about a scrap lot that's been deleted. But this is the point that you can talk about. We changed the sampling procedures. We just started an improvement project. Or we think we see a trend and we're watching it carefully. Whatever you put in the comments shows on the overall metric window, so people look at it and see what you're doing. The advantage is it's all free form. There's no required format on it at all. That shows you the pieces to build a metric. I'm going to check my notes right now to make sure I covered everything.
We have one more question.
Oh, go ahead.
Will this software work off of Minitab version 14?
Didn't test it. That's not fair. The macros that we're running work fine on version 14. So, being that we've tested it on 14, 15, and 16, but you do need a server license, not an individual user license, to make it work. So if you have a server license of version 14, it should work just fine. But we have not tested it. My guess, though, is that Minitab doesn't. I bet you'd have to talk to them about how they manage server licenses. I know the one that we have, along with it, comes with routine updates to it. So, I don't know. Mallory, was there another one?
That's it for now. Please
all right, thank you.
Be sure to enter your questions as they come up.
Yeah, you can play Stump the Speaker here if you want. Let's go through. I think that's all I'm going to show you. I'm going to go back to my presentation now. Hopefully showing you this brought up some questions. There it is.
We have one more question.
Oh, go ahead.
Can this be embedded in BPM software like Power Designer or work with it?
Any software that can accept a hot link of a web address, you can bring this into. I have not used either of those software, but if you're allowed to put a link, it'll do it. So if you want more than that, we can look it up after the webinar. Just leave a note when you log out. Okay, that was the software. Now, I appreciate the questions. If there's more, just go right on ahead and type them in. I'm going to talk about why have a scorecard. I mean, at some level, all of you got on here probably because it said scorecard software. If you've been doing it a while, you know that scorecard in itself isn't necessarily good. There's some good uses I have here. They help to make knowledgeable business decisions. Your leadership doesn't have to guess. It keeps performance public so everybody knows we're going, both good and bad. Customers like to see scorecards. But there's also some real negative, or let's say less positive uses. Sometimes they're just because the customer says have a scorecard, so we made one. We fulfilled an audit requirement. And I've lived in a place where the scorecard is the tool tool of choice to beat up employees for not doing their job right. There's also some other things that you wonder why we have scorecards if we're not going to use them. We actually had a client come through, one of our students, that kept 2 scorecards. One they showed their customer and one they used internal. The internal one was full of red, but they didn't want their customer to see it, so they made them all green when they showed their customer. So again, when you have an arbitrary nature to a lot of scorecards and they're not based on real data, you're at risk. Now, everyone who signed up for this, if they chose to, I guess, filled out a survey about how satisfied are you of your current scorecard system. Well, I'm a statistician and a black belt. I guess I couldn't take numbers without making a chart. But here's a Pareto chart of how you guys marked it. Notice 1 is dissatisfied, very dissatisfied. A 3 would be it's okay. But if you look at the top 3 bars, or 75% of you rated it adequate or less than adequate. And if I throw in the people who didn't even have one, we're up to almost 90% of you. But really, like 12% of the people are satisfied with their scorecards. Now, that doesn't surprise me after the times I've worked with them. I had a project in my last employer to implement a scorecard. I could say I didn't do a great job, but I know it's still in use.
We have a question.
Oh, go ahead, Mallory.
How can I generate a library of scorecard metrics that I am interested in rather than looking at my list every time from a master list?
Oh, at some level, that's what we view the value chain for. You make a graphical representation of your organization or your cognizance or your function or your department, and you just link those metrics in. Let me go back. I didn't show you one thing in the software. Hopefully it hasn't kicked me off yet. I'm going to go to my home and my metrics tab. What you have here is you have a list of all the metrics. Now this is, I guess, the table that Forrest mentioned, or maybe what whoever was talking about. A list of all the metrics in the system. We have the ability to down select. Like I only want the ones that are in Austin. Well, here, I'll do Unit 12. When I hit this, you'll only see the ones. Oh, I guess I didn't put a Unit 12 in my system. There's only a Unit 1. Yeah, there's only 4 that go to that. So the concept of it is, with the metadata, you can still make a table of metrics that are just yours. You could do it by owner. But you also have the graphical method that you would make a web page that has all the links that you care about on it. You make it as a bookmark on your browser, and you can check it instantly at any time. So that's the advantage of doing it. Did I do okay on that answer? Well, type back if that wasn't good enough. But no, you don't have to be a whole list. The idea is the flexibility with metadata sorting or building a little web page with links. You can actually even paste the links into a PowerPoint and get to them if you want. It doesn't have to be a web programmer. But again, that's where everybody scored. Now we have a question coming up. Do we have time to do the poll, Mallory? Okay. We heard what you said about your scorecard system, but I'd like to have all of you make an estimate of the metrics that you know that your organization does track or view. What % are really useful? Or that they are used to drive performance. Now, if you're not working right now, pick the last place you work. Just pick a number. Oh, I got to thank you for the answer on the library. So I appreciate that. Does anybody? Oh, here we're getting some people pop in there. It's looking a little bit like the useful scorecards. Most of the numbers are in the lower percentages. Oh, there's someone who likes them. Good. We're getting a full spread. Now, the only reason I asked this question, we're going to sign off here in about 10 seconds if you'd please select it. Mallory, would you post it, please? Now, you should all see it on your screen. The 10 to 50% range is where people fall. Think about that. Less than half of the things you're tracking, you're doing something with. If you'd go back to the presentation, Mallory. That's not necessarily great, but I find that's very true in most scorecard systems that they just threw it together. In our belief, you should only be tracking metrics that you're willing to do something about. Why have a metric on your scorecard that if it goes bad, you're just going to say, well, I'll look again next month? 2 things go wrong. You reinforce to your organization that you really don't care about your scorecard because you may realize one doesn't matter. There's one that you care about, but who knows that the next guy sees it go bad and also says, It doesn't matter. We really want you to go, if you're going to have a scorecard, do it right. Being, like I said, there's a little bit of learning going to go on here too. We're going to talk about different methods. I'm going to go through them real quick to display stuff. And then we're going to talk about a system for putting together a good scorecard. Because I expect a couple of you are sitting there going, I'd sort of like to make a scorecard or rebuild ours. What might I do? First, let's talk about how scorecards in general, ones out in the market, report performance. Well, here's one that we came from one of our clients, a student. This was their red, yellow, green scorecard for late deliveries. Now, this one's beautiful if you were a designer with colors, but it's got way too much stuff on it. This would be a hard chart for people to look at and understand. All right? Here's probably the most common method we've seen when we go through our clients is they use Excel. They type in the number every month or week that gets on there. It's got a conditional format to change a color based on a value. So it's sort of like an engine warning light. It's green, red, or yellow at the moment you put the data in. And I'm sure a couple of you have these. It's got disadvantage of the fact that it's really not looking over time, and it's also based on an arbitrary, generally, requirement. Very few metrics in your organization have a true customer requirement spec that defines bad and good. Most of them we ever see are internally set goals, which isn't necessarily red. This is one I pulled off an Oracle website to show you what some of the high-end ERP systems provide. But they make dial indicators. They make bar charts that have a center line on it. You see these in industrial process control equipment. But really, they're just the instantaneous value of your process. But is that adequate? If you don't know the history, why do you want to know what it is today? I mean, I drive my car. If that engine warning light comes on, I'd like to know more than it's bad right now because you don't know how bad, but you also don't know, has it been building for a long time? Is it instantaneous? So generally, any scorecard that only provides an assessment of the momentary performance is missing the whole function of time. And it leads us to what we do with our EPRS. We like the graphical method because you can make a lot of links. You can logically show where metrics impact the business. And yet plus, our scorecard involves a control chart, which allows us to both look now and over time. And at some level, if you don't have a control chart, how do you know if you're trending out of control until it's bad? The red, yellow, and green at some level doesn't tell you until after the problem occurred. Using the methods we're talking about, you might find out early. Like I said, it's not as easy as it's buying cool software and starting it up with all the metrics that people have today. No, no, no. What you'll get is a very expensive, pretty picture that takes a lot of labor to keep pretty, but the behavior will be identical to what it is today, and that's not good. So if you're going to develop a scorecard, be thoughtful. Have a plan, and a plan to identify the right metrics to use. And it doesn't matter if they don't exist today. I've never done a good job of putting scorecards together that a business had all their metrics. You'd say, well, we don't have a metric on how long it takes for the sales cycle. We don't track it. Well, but that's a good metric if you're looking at growth. So you put a pencil down, you're going to develop it. But you start with what you need to know in building your scorecard, not what you have. And the one probably it's the least beneficial is ask people what they want. Because everybody wants one that makes them look good, not one that points out their problems. Let's talk about the Smarter Solutions IEE method for putting this together. We have a process we call the Enterprise Tmaic. Uses the tools of Lean and Six Sigma to help you generate really a scorecard plus take your scorecard and lead it to a project selection or improvement method. But here's a quick overview. Now you can find all this in one of Forrest Beifogel's book. It's IEE System Book, as it says in the yellow block. It's a free ebook that you can get off our website if you're interested. If you've been one of our students, you have most of this material already. But what you do is you start out with a functional description of your business. What does it have to do to succeed? And then you come up, how do I know if the function works? That's your first tier of metrics. So you group your metrics then, and then you'd say, well, I also need to know it by division. So then I would put divisions below that function, and what is the metric at the division level? Now, we do not believe in rolling up metrics from the bottom up into indices. Really, we believe you start from the top and drill into your organization, not what do I do and roll it up to the top. We believe in hierarchical diagrams because nobody looks at, very few people look at the whole business. Generally, you're caring about your division, your department, your function. So you start at the top, and everything you do, your function must lead to success at the top level, because the goal of every business is to, I guess, have good financial health. And we do recommend the DMAIC, or Enterprise DMAIC Value Chain format. I want to talk about a couple key things before we go on. Avoid too many metrics. Don't include metrics that you're not going to act on. Why have a metric that you're not going to do anything with? That takes up bandwidth just to keep track of it and make comments and update it. And the last one is to focus on output performance metrics at a high level. And when you drill down, it's the outputs of the level below it, which are really the inputs to the higher level. But different from SPC or process control, that you start with the inputs and work forward. We want to start from the top and work down. I had to throw this slide in. It really wasn't in here until about an hour ago when I said, you know, we need to talk about what's a good metric too. Here's 10 things. Oh, it isn't 10. It's 8 things that are coming out of his IEE book series. But when you pick a metric, it should meet these characteristics before you decide to add it to your scorecard. So here's how we do it if you're going to use the EPRS system. First thing you do is manually assess the performance in Minitab. So you pull it into Minitab, you build charts, you look at the data. You'll always find bad data, missing data. Once you got it done, you follow the methods for the 30,000-foot reporting, and we give you information on that if you haven't taken a class on it. Build your charts, look at predictability. Once I've found the last predictable range, you use it to make a capability assessment. Now, at this point, if you don't have a system, what you do is you copy those charts and the comments, paste it into some document, and issue it. And then you start over again and manually go enter new data into Minitab. This is very labor intensive. First scorecard system I looked at putting in at one of our clients of my other company, they estimated 1% of their staff manpower went to maintaining their performance management system. And that's horrible. That's just horrible. But it was all manual data transferred from whatever they were doing into the scorecard system. I couldn't believe they'd survive an audit on that. The next one is, once I've got my metrics, I create a metric hierarchy. This is what the value chain does. Some are high-level metrics, some are drill-down metrics, but every person in the organization does not need to see every metrics. You look at the ones that you care about, and you only look deeper into the organization if you find a problem at your level. So what we do is we build a hierarchy, and we've talked about it with a flow charting software. But again, it could go to any software as one of the questions came about. Then you use Minitab to analyze the metric. It generates the chart. You set the scheduler to update the chart on some periodicity. Then you use the EPRS to publish the chart so it'll keep updated. And then link that URL for that metric to whatever system you want. We would put it in the flow chart for the value chain, but it can go to anything. Now, I'm going to go back through. This is that's the system of putting it together. The rest of this I'm really going to talk about the EPRS system. There's a couple important things I want to emphasize. One is it's intended to automate the chart creation and somewhat the capability analysis used in Minitab, so you do not need a human to intervene. Saves an awful lot of labor. It allows the scorecard to be formatted with standard flow charting software. And I didn't really cover it, but the EPRS system does allow you to load any type of graphic or web page format into its own web server for building individual scorecards. And probably the neatest part is the entire output of this system is available to everybody who can get access to the server within your intranet with no licensing requirements. They have a browser on their PC of any standard browser. They can view the metrics, click through them just like anybody else. Again, unless you've restricted a metric with the accessibility issues. So you only buy the one license for the software, and now it's available to everybody from the CEO down to an operator on the floor. So again, just a web browser. There's no installed software across your network. That'll make your IT people happy. It's all web-based. So really, you don't even need any training of your workforce to use it because it's point and click. Saves a lot of effort there. Plus, we base all the analysis on Minitab or industry standard software, so there's no question that the analysis is done right and repeatedly right. And since Minitab updates, and they have a wonderful history of backward compatibility, it'll always work for you. And we'd like to stress the graphical nature. Scorecards without pictures, it's almost like you've lost part of the value of the whole thing. If it's just a number, some people don't get it, but pictures generally allow everyone to understand the performance. Using the hierarchical nature, too, allows you to visibly see how you get deeper into an organization. But really what the EPRS has done for us, it gives you your performance chart and your scorecard, but it also allows you to link to anything else on your network you want to do that you might need to associate with it. Org charts, control plans, maintenance, sampling plans, other flow charts, procedures, even regulations, governing documents, anything that if you're looking at that and you have an interest to go look up something, you can build a link to it right there on the scorecard. Finishing up here, we're going to talk about some of the specifics. This is like the boilerplate stuff you might get. Right now it uses direct entry of data, SQL databases, which are most all the ERP systems, SAS, SAP, and most of the second and third tier ones also. It'll use Excel workbooks, and I forgot Access is also an SQL database. But also any data you keep in Minitab. So what it'll do is if you store the data on your network, the system can go get it as long as it's accessible from the server that it resides on. And for charting, you can see the ones it does here. Now, the way we categorize it using our methods, there's really three types of charting. There's the continuous data that's got specs. That's really customer-based requirements. There's also continuous data that doesn't have a specification. This is the stuff your business will put goals or targets on, such as the temperature of a tank or the number of transactions each person should get done a day. We treat those different than we do a customer requirement. And there's attribute data, count data, yields, such as that. Now the system, you tell it what type of data is, and it'll build the correct chart for you. And again, I said at the beginning, this is not the first time out of the gate for this one. This is version 2, which we have added a lot of stuff that we found in our early pilot testing. Better metadata for making reduced scorecards or shorter lists. More flexibility in the ability to put graphics in, like we used a flow chart, but now it allows a lot of different things you can load into the system. But also it allows you to just paste the chart into your own systems if you don't want to use the value chain. Now, it's hard for you to judge simple. I'll tell you, but the chart generation interface and the functionality is a lot more trouble-free now. We've added a lot of help screens built into it to make the development go easier. We've added a lot of search capability for the bigger users with lots of metrics, allows you to find stuff. That's really the stuff I'm here to talk about in the enterprise performance reporting system. I'd like to finish here with a question. What stuff is important in the scorecard that I didn't talk about? So if you guys would all pick, I think you get to pick as many as you want on that list. It's not just one. But what do you think's missing? I guess missing may not be right. What do you think is important? If you were picking a chart, what's important to you or your business? All right. I'd like to go a little bit long. Everybody read through and make a couple choices. And just to take the pressure off, there's no wrong answer. All right? I can tell you right now, Forrest would be happy if he's sitting here. Because red, yellow, green scorecard coding, not as important. I think Mallory posted it. That's by far the lowest. The highest is control charts, and I guess that probably got to do with the audience that we send our notes out to. But yeah, I think that's real important. and the ability to do drill-down scorecards if somebody asks questions on. Well, thank you for that, because it tells us that we're on the right track putting the scorecard system together. You might see that we did introduce red, yellow, green score in there because we found there's a real draw of managers to like the simplicity of red, yellow, and green. How are we doing on time? We're almost done. I'd like if there's any questions left. And I can refer you, there's a blog I write for those that know me, or you can get it off our website called the Practitioner's Toolbox. Just posted something about how you can turn red and yellow, green scorecards into good behavior versus bad. And it really is redefining the reason things are red or yellow and green, not the value, but the behavior you want to assess. And that's what we purport in our system here. That's the end. So I hope you've seen some benefits. Did show an overview using the system. I'll admit part of it, I'd like you to be so excited that when you get contacted by us, or even beforehand, call us and say, I'd like to know more, because we really think that this system, this software, can be a real benefit to our clients and everybody else. Or we really wouldn't have put it together. Is there any more questions coming on? Please give me one more. I got 10 minutes. I'd hate to get done early. Is there anything I could have talked about? I don't think so. The stuff that we didn't talk about, though, that I didn't intend to, was the Minitab macros, very complex, about a year in development, trouble-free building of those combined charts with a statement in them, plus you give it specs, it'll calculate all your capabilities. And if you procure this system, you get those macros for free use throughout your company. I guess that's all I got.
If you have any other questions, just please let us know. Like Rick said, we will be following up with you. You can definitely reach out to us. In the meantime, again, thank you for taking the time to join us today.
And you'll be getting an email after this. It'll talk about the recorded version. And if you don't want us to contact you, that when you exit the GoToMeeting, there should ask you another question that we're interested in. And also you have a chance to opt out on further contact. Appreciate your time. I know it was an hour out of your day. Have a good day.